The rain fell steadily on the windshield as Emily's car pulled into the gravel driveway of the Elderwood Guesthouse, a three-story Victorian structure nestled at the edge of the black pine forest. The sun had long disappeared behind a shroud of gray clouds, and the fading daylight gave the house a skeletal appearance, casting long shadows across its aged walls and crooked windows. Emily glanced at the GPS. "Room 313, she murmured. "Top floor." Of course. She was a travel blogger by profession, and the guest house was supposed to be the perfect hidden gem for her next review. The online photos were charming, almost nostalgic: lace curtains, antique furniture, a garden wrapped in wild roses. But the reality was much more somber. The front door creaked open before she could knock. A tall woman in her 60s with silver hair tied tightly in a bun stepped into view. Her pale skin looked almost translucent under the porch light. "You must be Emily Harper," she said, her voice sharp yet polite. "I'm Margaret, the caretaker. You're in room 313. Top floor. End of the hall." Emily offered a smile, took her keys, and carried her bag inside. The interior was heavy with the scent of old wood and lavender, and each of her steps echoed through the quiet halls. Paintings lined the walls, most of them portraits of unsmiling people dressed in clothes from a century ago. Their glassy eyes seemed to follow her. She climbed the narrow staircase, the wood groaning beneath her weight. Room 313 was at the far end, just like Margaret said. Its brass number plate was slightly tarnished, and the door handle felt unusually cold. Inside, the room was quaint, lined with dark wood furniture. A canopy bed stood to one side, and an ornate dressing table with a tall oval mirror occupied the other. The mirror was the first thing she noticed. It was massive, with vines carved into its gold frame, standing nearly as tall as the ceiling. Oddly, something about the mirror made her uneasy. It wasn't the design, nor the placement. It was the reflection. Something about it didn't seem right. She walked closer. For a moment, she could have sworn her reflection blinked before she did. That night, Emily tossed in bed. The wind whispered through the trees outside, but inside, it was the silence that disturbed her the most. At 2:13 a.m., she woke up with a jolt. Tap, tap, tap. It was coming from the mirror. She turned on the lamp. Nothing. The room looked normal, if not a little cold. She approached the mirror slowly, heart pounding. "Just old wood expanding," she whispered. Then she saw it, a smudge on the mirror's surface. She wiped it with her sleeve, but the smudge didn't go away. It was on the inside, and it looked like a handprint. In the morning, she asked Margaret about the mirror. "Oh," the old woman said without much expression. "That mirror has always been in room 313. It was here even before the guest house was built. The original owner refused to let it go, even after she died." Emily blinked. "After she died?" Margaret stared at her for a long moment, then said, "You'll get used to it. Most guests do." That evening, Emily decided to film a short vlog entry. She set up her camera facing the mirror, wanting to capture the antique charm. But as she reviewed the footage, her face went pale. In the reflection, behind her, stood a woman in an old-fashioned black dress, motionless, her eyes dark and hollow. But in real life, there had been no one. Emily turned toward the mirror. Nothing. Just her own reflection. But this time, her reflection was smiling. She wasn't. Emily didn't sleep that night. She sat cross-legged on the bed, the camera footage open on her laptop, replaying the same scene again and again. There was no doubt. The woman in black had been there, standing behind her, just for a second, enough to turn her blood to ice. By morning, she was certain something was wrong with room 313, and it had everything to do with that mirror. She walked into town to get breakfast and some air. At a dusty antique bookstore, she struck up a conversation with the elderly shopkeeper, hoping to learn more about the guest house. When she mentioned room 313, the old man's face stiffened. "You're staying there?" he asked, lowering his voice. "That room's been trouble since the 1920s. Used to be part of the Ravens' Hire estate before they turned it into a guest house. A woman named Lillian Vale lived there." Emily leaned closer. What happened to her? She was obsessed with mirrors. They say she believed they were doors to the other side. One day, she locked herself in that room and never came out. When the maid finally broke down the door, Lillian was gone, vanished. No sign of her body. But the mirror, it was warm to the touch, like it had absorbed something. Back at the guest house, Emily examined the mirror again. The handprint was still there. She touched it gently. The glass rippled. Startled, she jerked back. Her breath caught. She steadied herself, picked up her phone, and began recording. As her fingers touched the surface again, the glass began to bend inward, like water. She pushed harder. The room vanished. She fell into darkness, not black, but a dim gray void, as if the world had been drained of color. Behind her, the mirror had become a wall. No way back. Emily. The voice was cold, delicate, and near. She turned around. There stood Lillian Vale. Her face was cracked like porcelain, her eyes hollow, and her black dress seemed to move on its own, as if alive. "You saw me," she whispered. "Now you're mine." Emily ran. But the corridor inside the mirror stretched endlessly. The portraits on the walls were alive, their painted eyes blinking, some weeping, others mouthing silent screams. She stumbled into a grand ballroom of glass, mirrors on every side reflecting infinite Emilys, but only one had movement. Hers wasn't moving. It just smiled. Suddenly, a voice echoed through the space. "Don't trust your reflection." Emily turned, disoriented. It came from a girl, a child, trapped inside a frame. Her hands beat against the glass. "She copies you at first," the girl said, her voice trembling. "Then she becomes you." Emily understood. The woman in black wasn't just a ghost. She was a reflection, one who had learned how to escape. She took lives and left her victims trapped inside the mirror. If Emily didn't find a way out, her body in the real world would be taken over, and she would become just another haunted memory inside the glass. She searched the space, calling to the child, to anyone who could help. Then she found it, a fracture in the mirror world, a thin crack of light. She charged forward, ignoring the shadowy figures reaching out to stop her. Lillian shrieked, chasing her. But Emily was faster. With one last breath, she dove through the crack and woke up on the floor of room 313. Morning light streamed through the window. The mirror stood silent, cold, ordinary. She ran to it. No handprints, no face, only her reflection. And she was smiling. But this time so was Emily. A real smile. Epilogue. Emily checked out that afternoon. Margaret handed her the receipt, eyes narrowed. "No trouble, I hope?" the caretaker asked. Emily hesitated. "No," she said. "Just a strange dream." As she walked out, Margaret turned toward the mirror in room 313. For a brief moment, it shimmered. Inside, trapped behind the glass, a girl pounded against the surface. It wasn't Emily. It was Lillian Vale, screaming silently as Emily, now free, drove away into the daylight.